Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our masterclass this afternoon as part of Cellissimo. My name is Fineen Collins and I am the Artistic Director of Music for Galway and Cellissimo. And I'm delighted that this afternoon's class is going to be given by the wonderful Hannah Roberts. Hannah studied with William Cleath, toured China with Yehudi Menuhin, is a very distinguished cellist, is the principal cellist of Manchester Camerata, is a distinguished cello professor in Manchester at the Royal Northern College, and is just an all-round wonderful cello person. Hannah's Bach Plus recital, Bach Plus 4, will be available to view on screens all over the world from tomorrow at 1 o'clock with a beautiful programme, Bach's 4th Suite in E-flat major, and a piece by Sally Beamish called Gala Water, as well as an arrangement of an English folk song. So that is really something to look forward to tomorrow at 1 o'clock. But right now she's here to impart some of her knowledge with our young students who are eagerly waiting by, and I'm not going to take any more time. Alice Kelly is here, our administrator, to look after everything and make sure that that everybody gets their allotted 40 minutes, and I will now hand over to you. So thank you very much, Hannah, for being here, and enjoy the class, everybody.
Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks, Vinny.
Thank you.
Our first student today is going to be Michael, if you want to turn on your video and audio.
Hello again.
Hi Michael, great to see you, and I think we have the pleasure of Dvorak Concerto second movement, don't we?
We do.
From you. So yeah, it'd be lovely to hear a substantial amount of what you've prepared, because we have 40 minutes. Maybe we'll stop a little bit before the cadenza or something, and just work a little bit on that, and then hopefully there's time to look onwards as well.
Okay, perfect.
well done. Lovely, lovely playing. I think just for efficiency's sake, should we stop there for a moment and just look at some of the things that you've done
Yeah,
in
that
that
would be
part,
perfect.
and then hopefully go on. I'd love to hear the cadenza and the recap as well. Yeah, really wonderful playing. You've got a lot of good facility, and you're clearly a very, very good natural musician.
Thank you.
So I actually wondered about, could you? I'm going to embarrass you immediately so that you get used to being embarrassed. Could you sing?
Okay.
Could you sing
Okay.
us the first phrase? And feel free to also gesture like kind of conducting of what you feel in the phrase.
Okay. Sorry.
Well done, well done. That's great. It was very cruel of me to
Someone
do
had a
that
glass of
first.
water.
But you sang that actually with excellent phrasing in terms of, for instance, the Ds, the three Ds that you have in the first two bars. The kind of shape and the hierarchy in your phrase was very naturally done in the singing.
Thank you.
And also the tempo is, I think, much more realistic in terms of how the wind will have played
Yeah.
the solo at the beginning. They're not going to want to play in a way that doesn't facilitate the natural kind of breathing in the phrase.
Yeah.
So I think really have a strong concept before you start to play of the combination between the feel of the tempo, the actual metric tempo, and also for us, the string players, the speeds of the bow,
Okay.
which are going to be the kind of, they're like taking the temperature of a person, the bow
Yeah.
speed. It's the kind of sign of the metabolism in the music.
Yeah.
So let's play that once again at the beginning. And while we're talking about tempo, I wondered what your thoughts were about the relationship between the opening and then the middle section from the key change.
I feel like after the key change, although it's still back to tempo one, I feel like there's more energy to it and more a want to travel. It's kind of deeper and there's more emotion in it in a different kind of a sense.
Yes. So you've answered the question with an answer that relates to the character of the music rather than the actual speed and tempo that you're playing in. So I think be careful about that, because it's possible to play in pretty much the same metric tempo but with a very different kind of character and metabolism.
Okay.
And the problem with adjusting the composer's tempos to suit what you feel the character of the music is too much is that you then end up with structural problems in your performance as a whole of the movement. So I think try always to stick with the basic tempo indications and find inside the music the other characteristics that you're talking about.
Okay.
You had two very different tempi.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's go back to the opening and try and get this feeling of the phrase through, as you sang it, through the kind of different bow speed.
Okay.
Right, good. But that's not what you sang. Now I'm going to embarrass myself by singing on YouTube. But you sang da 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 ya dum.
Okay.
But what you played was da 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 ya dum.
Okay.
So again, think about the shape and the speed of the bow. If you're growing towards the peak, so the harmony change on the E is what is the kind of highlight in that part of the phrase.
Okay.
Yes, okay, that's better. But how significant is this first upbeat in terms that it's just the beginning of the journey of this first part of the phrase? I think it's possible to overdo a crescendo within this first note, because if we do, we're almost forcing ourselves into playing the first beat of the next bar as a big downbeat. So I
Okay.
think a little bit of direction, but not a huge crescendo, so that you can go onwards towards the E. And it's piano, so I think find dolce piano in the sound. Yes, it's much better. Can you play me the accompaniment once?
As in the woodwind accompaniment.
Just play the bass line for that first bar.
I'm blanking slightly on this now.
So, ya da, ya, ya da. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So they're not going to play. They're going to play going towards the C. Good.
Yeah.
All right. Let's not get stuck here. But I just wanted you to be always, really having a strong foundation for your choices with the
Okay.
phrasing. But then also recognizing that delivering that is very much translating that concept into a shape in the bow speed.
Yeah.
Well done, great, much more convincing. Second comment would be about connections between notes and just encouraging you to think about where you're trying to be really expressive and where you are functionally moving on the fingerboard.
Okay.
Because, this moment, for instance, is awkward for us all, especially if you have small hands. I'm not sure that the first interval between D and G is the most expressive thing in that phrase, though.
Okay.
And at the moment, you're playing. By the way, I exaggerate lots, so don't be offended.
It's like,
But I'm not sure that you wouldn't sing. Da, ya, ya, dum.
okay.
If anything, probably here is more expressive, where we're going towards this harmony underneath the B natural. So I think be always very faithful to whether you're being expressive or just needing to get from A to B.
Okay.
And what are the practicalities for you of this interval? Are you trying to stretch, or you were shifting really?
I was shifting up and then.
Sure. Try this once just to see how it works. Maybe you could try 1 to 4. And then 4, 4, 1. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, good.
Okay.
I think that might be, give you more options. The other thing is think about what the winds have experienced at the opening. That just the act of blowing the wind into the instrument is their equivalent of everything that we can do with the bow, in terms of the speed with which the air goes into their instrument creates all sorts of different effects in their sound.
Yeah.
So I think you can be aware of, if this was olive oil or something, or honey, have you put your olive oil in the fridge? Has it gone, much more difficult to pour, or has it been in the sun? I think there's something a little bit stuck maybe in the bow. There you might want to slower bow, at the beginning you might want slightly more motion through your stroke.
Yeah.
So let's try that from the D.
Sorry.
Yeah, well done. You certainly got a much bigger range into the sound.
Yeah.
And another thing that you did more of this time was to distinguish where you were going to put the bow on the sounding point between the end of the fingerboard and the bridge.
Yeah.
So I think if you're very slow and have a lot of resistance all the time in the bow, then that precludes the possibility to be more mobile in the sounding point, and that gives you less colour range.
Okay.
I don't know how you work on things like scales, you know, whether you tend to do them as a warm-up and for the intonation hopefully, and you know, string crossings, all these things that we all hopefully work on when we're doing the scales, but I would always suggest spicing them up a little bit as well, with things like maybe moving over 4 notes towards the bridge and then back away from the bridge in a kind of pattern, or over 8 notes. That kind of thing. You could do that with a regular bow speed, and then you could try it also increasing the speed of the bow. And doing the opposite pattern, starting near the bridge of the slow bow and getting faster.
Okay. So just experiment more in general with traveling.
With the combination of the sounding point of the bow and the bow speed, yeah.
Yeah, I'll experiment more with that, definitely.
Widen things out. All right, good. Let's go onwards now. And I don't know if you ever boil the music down to the bare basics of what's there, because essentially in the next phrase, can you just play 2 notes instead of 16 notes? If you just had to play 2 notes to represent what comes next.
As in, literally play 2 notes.
Yeah. Yeah, could be, or it could be.
Okay.
And then the third one.
Oh yeah, okay.
So basically, it's a glorified upbeat, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just a very beautiful, decorative, ornate version. And so I just wondered about making a simpler kind of shape with the bow. I think you're changing the bow 3 times there. Maybe you could change the bow less. So we feel that as one gesture rather than sort of 3 gestures. Yes, absolutely. So it's not so much that I'm suggesting, you know, a different bowing, more that just to look at the essence of that gesture and then try to simplify what you do with the bow.
Okay, yeah.
Good, and let's just also make sure we get to the heart of the sound at the peak of the hairpin. Because it's not. It's a more beautiful shape than that. Yes, much better. And is it a jazz club, or is it a kind of more pure? I mean, this is sounding a little bit like the illicit jazz club.
That's my apologies.
I'm just teasing you because I'm coming back to that point about connections.
Yeah.
How you connect the notes. So maybe, I mean, if you don't want that slide, you could put a 2 and then a 3.
Okay. And then one there.
Yes, stretch. I have no sympathy. You've got huge hands. So stretch.
Yeah, I'd have to practice that one.
So really, I mean, it's just a rocking and opening. And I would practice things like that if I'm trying to expand my sort of left-hand capacity. You know, practice in a linked bowing between the notes. So that you build as much kind of malleability into your hand as you can.
Okay. And the 4 there is
And
that
then 4, and then 4. Yes. Yeah, good. Yeah, well done. Great. So, I mean, this session isn't all about fingerings in any way, but just to sort of think about these connections and not to kind of connect notes with a slide that are not really expressive in that way.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Will I carry on? Is it the same with the next one, boy?
Yes, it'll be the same with the next one. And then I wondered about the third one. Maybe the character, even at the beginning of this one, is a little bit more serious. There's a little bit more sense that something needs to change. We've had twice already the same harmonization. So I wondered if you could maybe start with a different combination of ingredients in the bow. So could this be a little bit more density maybe in the bow when you even start? Yes, well done. I mean, I don't think there's any need to change the bow here and to break this arpeggio into 2 gestures. And do you have those accents on the quavers?
I don't. Oh no, I do. Sorry, they're just covered up with fingerings, but no, I do on the.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know whether the fingerings have made it look as if there should be a slur on them, but I think there probably shouldn't because they're quite emphatic, yeah? So I think try to play with more articulation, maybe separate bows.
Okay. Do the other one.
Try down bow now. Try down bow with one bow. Super. And just to carry on this idea about the different ways in which bow distribution is really important in a craftsman-like way and in an artistic way. I think in a craft way, it's awkward if we have that triplet with the whole bow. It's bound to stick out.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely no need to use the whole bow on the crotchets. Here, obviously, a bit different. You will have to use most of the bow. But now you don't have to use the whole bow. So I think don't make life difficult for yourself with the triplet by using so much bow in the crotchets.
Okay.
Do you have another question though? Do you have tenuto written in the middle triplet because you're playing?
No, sorry, I don't. I was just doing that to emphasize the diminuendo in a sense, but I can take that out.
I think I wouldn't add such a major articulation if it's not there and it's part of a sequence.
Yeah.
Let's do this one more time. And that has a sort of glissando, the G sharp, which is quite dramatic. We had such consonant music, G natural, but when they get to the G sharp, it needs a little bit more emphasis with the bow. Great, well done, well done. I really feel there's a really good level of detail coming into the playing now, so that's excellent, well done. I think things have been not very turbulent, have they, from the opening until we get to and suddenly we've got a little bit more detail in the rhythm, the dynamics become more dramatic, etc. So I think make sure that you have both a strong sense of your own pulse, of the, or not your own pulse, but the pulse that you want us to feel the tempo to be in,
Okay.
But then against that, what you would like the kind of character of the rhythms that you play to be.
Okay.
So a good example of that would be that I felt that the tied B flat, for instance, I couldn't sort of feel the pulse in that bar. 1, 2. So I really want to feel the length of that tied note,
Okay.
and the kind of activity of the upbeat notes after it.
Okay.
So that's one thing. I'd like to tie 2 points in if that's all right. So the other point to tie into this section is that it's quite a difficult marking that we have, and it comes in the next section as well. Because, you know, we have a diminuendo under each pair of notes, but we also have an accent on the first note.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite hard to do. So could you play those once just without the accent, just with the diminuendo? All right, good. So let's just explore that first. I mean, does the diminuendo shape suggest to you just a dynamic thing, that you're going to play the second note quieter than the first note?
Not necessarily. Well, it shouldn't always, I'm thinking. I think it's probably more intensity rather than volume, in a sense.
Well, I agree, and I think, I mean, that it does mean that the second note should be less, but it also, if you take that in the context of the interval, perhaps there should also be more density in the first note. So this point we were experimenting with before about where you put the bow.
Yeah.
So you actually get more difference in the kind of sound between those two notes.
Yeah.
Can you just try that? Good. It's already better. It's already better. And now let's sort of add the accent to the very beginning of that sound as well. So much better. I thought before it sounded very generic, and now it's much more specific with the accent and those things. And if you then vary where you are in the bow, it'd be even more dramatic. You have a poco cello rondo there as well. So you don't have to do all of that in exactly the same part of the bow, so you get more variety. Yeah. Good, and let's go back to the previous point, which was to do with really characterising the rhythm as much as possible. Great, really well done. Do you mean this?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
So again, I mean, just time your shift. Time your shift with the bow to avoid that. But excellent, really well done. Just, I think it's so good to practice in a way that gives us helpful perspective for when we actually do play with the piano or the orchestra. And especially this piece tends to get a bit of a reputation for being a tour de force, and that we have to play very loud, we have to make sure we conquer the orchestra and sort of be out there. But actually looking at how you can focus the ear of the listener as well on the kinds of sound within the same dynamic, I think is really important. So you could even also just take those main notes of the phrase that you were just playing, and make sure that they have a variety of ingredients, that they make sense in the hierarchy of the phrase.
Yeah.
Can we just do that? Because I think there's more that you can do with that kind of variety. Can you actually start, could you start with the A?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I lost my place.
Yes. And that's the ultimate one, isn't it? So you could say that the A is the beginning of something brewing up. You sort of feel the orchestra, the shock of the sforzando. The D is becoming more forthright, more open, and the F is kind of heroic arrival. So just try that once again, see if you can find something different in each. Yes, it's so much better. Could you now put that in the context with all the notes in between?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so much better. And yeah, this is what's required when you play this with an orchestra, is not that somehow you get a kind of big electronic booster on your cello and smash every other cellist into oblivion. That's not going to happen. It's that you get the context and the proportions and the characteristics of the sound to help the kind of hierarchy of your sound and of the phrase as well. And there's just, one other thing. Even though we will run out of time, I want the points to make sense in combination and to maybe see a pattern that might be helpful when you go away. And I think we were talking about bow distribution and rhythm before. I don't know if you noticed, but what's happening in the sextuplet is that you have so much bow on your last group of two. So that last pair of notes, you have so much bow that you're taking so much more time over it.
Yeah.
But if anything, in the rhythm, you would want to launch your D. So I think be careful about the bow distribution, that it works for you in your phrase.
Yeah, okay.
Great. I know we're going to run out of time, unfortunately, in a minute, but I'd love to hear just the beginning of the middle section and trying to keep the tempo more similar, but find all the characteristics that you were talking about in the music within that tempo.
Sorry.
Okay, good, lovely, a very rich sound. Really enjoyed the sound. Very, very good. I think if you were going to keep, you know, in this original tempo, but still feel satisfied with the different character here, one very important thing would be to feel the upbeats quite strongly.
Okay.
And at the moment, you know, you were talking about more energy in this. Maybe use a bit more energy in the shift. You're sort of spending quite a long time, sort of very. That heartbeat. I think if you could make sure that when it comes to an upbeat, there is a feeling of motion connecting that to the next beat.
Okay.
Yes. So I think somehow you got upside down with the bowing that time, didn't you?
I think I might have, yeah.
Yeah. So let's have another go. I think just explain to me how you're thinking about this first shift in terms of when is your third finger actually taking over, and what's the sensation you're looking for in the left hand?
I think I was shifting on my third finger. Shifting instead of arriving on the second and then.
Uh-huh. I mean, I personally, I do 1 to 3, 1 and then, so that I've actually got quite a lot of sensation, you know, in the shift on the third finger before I actually arrive in it on the D.
Okay.
So whichever finger you're doing, try to make sure that in the shift you're already fully feeling the finger that you're going to arrive in a bit more.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt. There's just a couple of minutes left in the lesson.
Thank you. Yes. And can you do it without vibrato once? And just try to feel how you've landed balance-wise in that finger. Maybe do mezzo forte. Good. I find it immensely useful to subdivide when I'm working on shifts. So if I was working on this shift, I might 1 and 2 and 1, 1 and 2 and 1, so that I've got real goalposts for when I'm asking my hand to move.
Okay.
So could you try and do that? Just think of dividing 2 beats, 1 and 2 and 1, so that you know exactly when to go.
Sorry.
Okay, so when are you thinking of leaving in relation to this 1 and 2 and?
The last and before the one.
So I think just after the last and, yeah? So 1 and 2 and now, yeah? Yes, it's coming, it's coming. And I think it's very important to feel comfortable with coordinating that with the bow. So try to feel where in the bow you're going to feel the shift. 1 and 2 and... So it's good to actually feel that shift quite near the heel. I want to feel that coincidence with the 2 hands. Yes, that's great. It's much
Okay.
better. So, I mean, I do have a bit of a bee in my bonnet about this subdividing thing, because I just find that, you know, it's easy to get in a bit stuck practicing shifts and feeling that, you know, next time you come back to it and it's gone backwards. I think if you always train yourself to have some sense of the inner timing
Okay.
of every shift, then you will build much more security.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely do that.
Great. I suspect that we're running out of time, I'm afraid. Do you have any questions?
I mean, just because we've worked on this page so far, the motif, those three, I was always questioning why the first one there's the hairpin and then it comes back down, but then the second one there's no diminuendo after it, so I was always wondering, are you going to that last G and then into the next one, or what is implied?
I think that, you know, that there can be a little bit of difference between the shape of the first one, the second one, and obviously we said the third one is very different.
Okay.
So that maybe just a different kind of nuance in that second one, that it's a little bit more handing to the orchestra as well.
Okay.
So I think it's just, you don't want to have the same kind of expression exactly verbatim
Yeah.
at the time. And we said it's based on a lot of decoration, that arpeggio, so there really is scope to show those slight different relationship with the orchestra as well.
Yeah. And the only other thing was then the G sharp change that comes after that, in the recapitulation the second time. I was always curious because this time it goes to fortissimo instead of forte.
Yes.
And then at the end of that phrase, you have two pauses before the end. I was just wondering, is there supposed to be a different kind of a character the second time you arrive, or?
Yes, I'm just looking for these two pauses. I've got the one on the top C.
Before the sorry, that's not the spot. It's actually further up. It's just before the recapitulation.
Oh yes. Yeah. So the question is, are you asking why there would be two pauses in a row there?
Compared to the first time when there's only a pause on the crotchet.
Yes. So the top C, that's fortissimo, that you were asking about. Well, first of all, let's look at the pauses. I think there's much more sense of everything that's come before the recapitulation this time. You've had a lot of drama in the middle section and then the whole of the cadenza.
Yeah.
So I think there is this feeling of finally laying that to rest, and a feeling of suspense about allowing us to slip back into the recapitulation.
Yeah.
Whereas the first time, I think we've only just got going with the ideas. It's just a gentle kind of way of buffering between the first theme and the second section.
Okay.
And then obviously I think the reason it's fortissimo in the is to make a more dramatic point in the recapitulation.
So would you vary that the first time you're playing both of those by doing less of a pause, or not as strong the first time, or would you?
I think I would find a different kind of sound. Maybe the first time is not so emphatic but more lyrical, and then the second time could have more edge in that fortissimo.
Yeah.
Now I think we have to move on to the next student. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, well, bravo, Michael.
Thanks for your time, really appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Great.
That's great. Thanks so much, Michael. Sorry to interrupt.
No,
So, Catherine, if you'd like to turn on your video and your mic, we can get started.
Hi.
Hi, Catherine. Lovely to see you again.
You too.
So we've got Bach Prelude to the C major suite.
Yeah.
Great. I think let's hear it all through. It'd be lovely to hear your performance first. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Great, bravo, bravo, beautiful playing. It's so lovely to see you again after such a long time and to see the amazing developments that you've made in your playing. Yeah, really well done, fantastic. And actually, I want to do something a little bit unusual. I'd like to just think about the opening and the end first, because I think of all the preludes, this just feels so symmetrical. Starting in that way and then coming back to the scale at the very end. It just is such a beautiful structure. And I think it's, it's very easy to kind of lay down that first scale as if somehow it's already finished when we get to the bottom note. And then something. And then at the end doing exactly the same thing. So I'd like to really think about how is that last section really connected to what comes before it, first of all, and keeping the pulse, which has been so regular because we've had most of the movement with semiquavers the whole time, through all of that chordal section, and making that connection a bit more. So let's start with that, and could you maybe play from just from there, and when you get to the chords, could you try to keep the same kind of pulse that you've had by keeping an awareness of semiquavers?
Okay. I'm sorry.
you'd set up the rest of it. Well done. What do you think about all of these harmonies? Are they all experimental, do you feel? Are they all a little bit hesitant? How do they relate? First of all, are we expecting that? You could have done that, maybe.
Yeah, it's kind of just teasing it out a little bit. Like it could very well have ended there, but it just kind of to keep it going, I always thought.
It definitely could have ended there with C major, but so what does it feel like having that interrupted chord?
It just kind of feels like kind of a surprise.
Yes, absolutely. Is it that kind of surprise when you reach into the fridge for a tomato and you touch something furry and hopefully it's not that kind of surprise. You don't recoil from the interrupted chord, but it's a surprise, but it actually spurs on another reaction, which is the next scale. So basically, I just feel that at the moment you play all of those chords with a very similar texture and shape, and maybe to have a rethink about that. What do they represent in terms of what we're expecting and how our expectations are dashed or fulfilled?
Yeah.
So I know that there's a lot of awareness about bow stroke shapes in this style, rounding things off, making rounded gestures, etc. And that's fine, but we need to sort of feel the actual function of these chords in the sequence as well.
Yeah.
So play it once again and experiment. Doesn't matter if you do something different that you don't like. Let's just try and find the differences here.
From the same place?
Yeah. So at least now I felt that this led, this one, so that's the leading chord into the C major, so that's good. But I still felt that furry rotten tomato in the fridge on the interrupted chord. Because the bass was great, but by the time we got to the top, it was really recoiling from the sound.
Yeah.
So trying to make a little bit more of a relationship between the tops of these chords as well, rather than just coming out of the bass and leaving no character in the top.
Yeah.
Let's try the same place again. And another thing that I think is of interest for you maybe is to further refine your control of the weight in the bow. So I think sometimes, especially in the lower half, it's possible to have too much weight. It's great to have really strong contact and clarity, but control the amount of weight that's going into the string so that you don't crush the sound in some of these semiquavers. Is in your mind. I mean, it doesn't seem to relate in any way to the tempo that you started in.
Okay. Yeah.
So I need to, I think with solo repertoire, this is always one of the tricky kind of combinations, is that we have to earn the trust of the listener because they don't have anything else than us to relate to in the performance. So that we're presenting both the basic pulse and then we're presenting how the rhythms of the composer relate to the basic pulse. And that's why I think it's really important that you don't suddenly change into half the speed that you started at the end. Are you aware of that?
I wasn't really thinking of the pulse on those chords. It's far easier to do just on the semiquavers, but I was trying.
Sure.
Yeah.
And there's another very important question, since we have to play so many chords in Bach. Are you feeling the pulse from the bottom of the chord or from the top part? And I think mostly the listener is hearing it from the top, not from the bass.
Okay.
So I think be careful about adding lots of time, because they won't be able to really compute that in the same way.
Yeah.
Good. Let's do one more time. We won't get stuck there, but it's just very important, I think, to find a good kind of tension between these chords. We were speaking about the bow weight, and for example, I can't remember all your bowings, so just ignore that. That's fine. Your bowings are fine. But if you're I'm exaggerating, but I think if we end up quite near the heel and don't modify the balance of the bow, it can sound a little bit grainy and a little bit stuck. So I think make sure that if you're in that lower half, you really feel that the string can still respond under the weight of the bow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bravo. That might feel very strange to you.
Yeah.
Because I think you were used to, it's a bit like if you're wanting to lose weight but you keep getting tempted, and instead of losing the weight you just buy the next size up in the clothes. Yeah? So don't do that with the pulse.
Yeah.
Well done. I must say that I thought your sound was now superb. Where you started that time, you found the right balance between the clarity and the amount of weight that's required to activate the string, and the kind of agility that you need to have when you've got so many moving notes. So I think, always check for each area of the bow that you have that balance really as best it can be. Well done. Great. Let's go back to the beginning now. And even if you want to have a little bit of a feeling of arrival in the beginning of the second bar and the sort of compass of that scale, could you play still with the potential to carry on? Because I think if we do it doesn't feel as if we're actually presenting something that has potential.
Yeah.
Yeah, well done, but I mean that scale was in a completely different tempo to the previous beats.
Yeah.
So So be, I think, very aware about the pulse here. And the other thing is, there are two kinds, at least, of downbeats. If we want to simplify it, two kinds of downbeats. And I think one is really gravitational, and the other is an opportunity for buoyancy, that it does have a sense of gravity, but it promotes something that comes out of that. I think I'm a little bit aware of the beats. So when you do touch upon something that is a more of a downbeat, could it actually elicit the next row of notes? So it's springy.
Yeah.
Let's do the beginning again. Well done. Well done. Great. So much better. So much better. Well done. I think the other thing I would use is this potential for different areas of the bow to give a slightly different nuance to the sound.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're already doing it a bit. I think bring that even more into the foreground. So especially if you're doing a more regular bow pattern like fours, that you actually bring these different characteristics out by doing them in slightly different parts of the bow as you go through the sequence.
Okay. From the start.
From the start, I mean, I know Zoom is not as nice as if we could be in the same room together, but I think I'm hearing quite a strong accent on the first note. I wonder if there's a way to maybe to emphasize the overtones a bit more by spreading that horizontally as soon as you come to the string. Fantastic, and even on Zoom I hear many more overtones.
Yeah.
It's very, very good, very good. Just one final thing, we won't get stuck here, but it's so, you're responding so well to all the details. I'm just intrigued. I think if we now did the same things, but instead of using the same amount of bow for all these groups of four, because you're very free, you're using most of the bow for all these groups, over the whole of the phrase, could you chart from maybe a bit less bow to the peak where you're really open with the bow? So we just get a lot more range into your sound. Super, that's great. And I think that's the other thing about solo repertoire, is that not only are we responsible for setting the basic pulse and then sort of playing the rhythms of the composer against that, we're also responsible for setting the ear of the listener into the kind of range that we're going to be able to produce with the dynamics and the nuances in our sound and all of those things.
Yeah.
And because this is, as we said, it's wonderful, C major, what a great key, and then the kind of everything being encompassed within this scale. I think the way you've just played it shows so much more range in your sound.
Yeah.
So that's really great. Well done. Let's go on. Really well done, really well done. One little problem I've got with the visuals is that when you move the bow quite fast across the string. I don't have very clear video, so I can't see absolutely everything that you're doing with the individual fingers all the time.
Yeah.
But what I would say is, I think, you know, it's really clear to me that you have voicings that you're picking out, but I would just keep refining the amount of control that you have with the fingers against the thumb in the right hand, because those kind of little voicings, I think you could maybe pick out a little bit more with the fingers in the right hand.
Okay.
And things like the slurs. Just being able to have maximum shape in the slurred groups as well. So a good way to practice those kind of things is actually to restrict the amount of bow quite severely.
Okay.
So that you have to use the fingers as much as possible. And I don't know, just on a side topic to that, I'm sure you do a lot of exercises and scales and things. Do you know the Christopher Bunting exercises?
I have a book of them. I kind of do them on and off. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, because there's one that I'm thinking of that you probably know then, called Zvola, which is this one where we kind of glue the arm to the side of the cello, so we can't use our arm, and we only cross the strings with the fingers. I think, you know, refreshing that kind of thing and using that capacity, that without having to use as much bow, you can really shape things into the string.
Yeah.
Let's just try slowly from here, really using the fingers. Well done, that's great. And at that speed I can see what you're doing with the fingers, so that's also, you know, well done. And then let's think about this other point, how much weight we're using in the string, and also whether there's enough variety in the sounding point. So I'm going to exaggerate now, but bass, melody, bass, so I might even, when I'm practicing very slowly, try to specifically move the bow more for the voicing.
Yeah.
Could we just try that at the slow speed as well? Good, well done, well done. I think there are a lot of benefits to picking things out slowly, obviously, but there are also dangers.
Yeah.
Because when you're up tempo, you won't have time to coax the string. It's going to have to be more immediate. So if you're doing that kind of work and you're trying to expand your use of the sounding point of the string, even if it's slow practice, I think make the movements more immediate. Otherwise, when you go up tempo, you'll be disappointed with the sensation being so different.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. So I think that's just a kind of practice that I would really encourage all of us to do on this music, so that we're in slower tempo, making all the moves that bring out the polyphonic kind of voicings of the
Yeah.
music. Yeah. Well done, that's really good. Let's go on from here.
Sorry, that was too slow.
Well done, that's lovely, really good. Which bass notes are you thinking of bringing out in this next phrase? So obviously this is all on the G. So I'm still doing the G through all that. So I'm just wondering after that, maybe you could show a little bit more of those bass notes.
Okay.
The A.
The
A. The D. And then the E. And then this obviously resolves on the... Good. Fantastic. It's much clearer. Much clearer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think that in physical terms with the bow, whenever we get the link between the end of one sequence and the next, so for instance, here's a new pattern with the bow starting. Maybe we need to think of the equivalent of hooking a train carriage to the engine, or a caravan to the car, or something. That you know, however big those objects are, the point of linkage between the two is actually quite small, and it has to be very specific. And once those things are joined, then you can progress onwards in the sequence. So in other words, we're back to the fingers of the right hand. Make sure that you're not using bigger kind of arm movements at the point where you join the end of one pattern to the beginning of the next one, that you're really keyed into the right hand fingers. So let's go from there, and when you get to that point, smaller movements.
And just a quick reminder, sorry Catherine, there's about 5 minutes left in the lesson.
Thank you. Yeah, good. Yeah, that's much better. I think my suggestion to you at the moment would be that each time you stop for something when you're practicing, and then you resume, that you really think about obviously the kind of sound you're imagining, but link that to the weight of the bow.
Yeah.
Because I think all of us can, you know, if we took every single opportunity to, you know, when we restart from something, think about the sensations that we want to feel, I think that really kind of helps to progress any of the things you're working on. And I think, for instance, it was quite kind of heavy, whereas if you think about finding the sweet spot for that bass note, where the string is kind of elastic. Yeah? That's very, very good. Very good. I know we're going to have to cut off quite soon, but I just wanted to mention, you know, one other idea. I think people talk so much in romantic music about colour. It's fine to talk about colour in the Dvorak or the Schumann, or something like that. And a lot more about sort of bass lines and sequences and these kind of things in Baroque music. But actually, there's just as much colour because there's harmony. Wherever you get harmony, you will get colour. So I think in anything that's sequential here, like the sequence we've just started, each time you go to a new harmony, if you could really find what you feel is characteristic about it, again, for technical talk, it would be the weight of the bow, part of the answer to that. But this is darker, of course. The B natural has a glimmer of light to it. Expressive. Next level. So each time you come to a new harmony, there's just that little bit of difference in the progression.
Yeah.
Great, it's so much better already, and I think the way that you did that was by anticipating a slightly different sensation from the right hand, with the weight and the. Very good. I realise that we don't have enough time to cover everything. I really enjoyed the performance a lot and thought you handled the middle section very well. But let's just look at that bowing before we have to finish the. Well done, and one of the things I really loved about the way you're playing that is that often you hear this and you feel very much sympathy for the cellist because they're clearly battling with this section. And you're really going for the shapes, which I love. Really well done. I just wondered about two things. One is make sure the middle note comes out enough. And secondly, sort of keeping that good relationship between the thumb and the fingers, the feeling of connection to the string. So I'm trying not to use too much bow, but just to really feel that the kind of pivot of the fingers against the thumb in the string.
Yeah.
Just try that. Maybe use a bit less bow, a little bit less bow at the beginning. Super, really good. And that middle part's really important there, isn't it? So I think from that place, maybe even bring out that F sharp even more as the leading note to the G. But no, that's super. Well, really, really well done.
Thank you. And just in that bit, sometimes I find it hard to get all the semiquavers even, just in terms of timing, and I'm not really sure what to do about that.
I mean, obviously, do some rhythm practice across the strings. That kind of thing, just for physical control. But I think if you can find the right relationship between the feeling of going into the string, a bit like with a cushion, you sit on a cushion, when you get up, there's a little bit of return on that. And so when we bear the weight into the strings in order to do the three notes, then obviously we pop back hopefully a bit on that separate note, which prevents us from getting too far down. So I think if you can get a bit like breathing out and breathing in, the right kind of relationship between going down into the string and the relationship between the amount of pressure that's going into the string on the down bow and the amount of bow, then that should kind of give you a rhythm.
Yeah. I just.
Yes, yeah, it's already better. I think the other thing that can happen is that we dip down too much with the elbow in the right arm
Yeah.
on the separate note and then hit the lower string. So that kind of thing. So keep the right level on the separate stroke so you don't dip down too far. Yeah, good, that's right. So I think that's healthy as well, not to kind of collapse too much.
Yeah.
Great, very well done. I think we've probably run out of time.
Thanks so much.
So it's really lovely playing and very nice to see you again.
Thank
Well
you.
done. Well done. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much, Catherine. Callum, if you'd like to join us now, you can turn on your video. I think there's extra at the moment. You could see what you can do.
Sorry?
There's an echo, I think, caused by your side. If you can, could you move over to the laptop or something? Sorry.
Oh no, I'm on the laptop. Is this better?
This is much better, yeah, it's gone. Thank you, sorry about that.
Hi.
Hi, Callum.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Hi. So you've got Schumann, is that right?
No. I was playing just the second movement of the Capio Sinfonia.
Oh, that's fine. Sorry, I've got them in the wrong order here. Good. Okay. Great. I mean, obviously, this is quite a long movement.
Yeah, I would
So,
if I could stop before the cadenza and we could work on that because
sure. Okay, great. Why don't you play up to that point then?
Sorry?
You play up to the point of the cadenza.
Yeah.
And then we'll stop. Good. Great. Well done. So is that where you'd like to stop? Because that's not quite the cadenza, is it?
Oh no, I meant like, but if you want.
Okay. Fine. No. Well, bravo. That's super. You know, really, really good. Are you happy to go back on what you've just played?
Yeah, I think just because I really want to. There's like a lot of things in the first like 3 or 4 pages that I think.
Sure. So look, bravo. This really is a tour de force. We were talking before about the Dvorak, how it's viewed as a tour de force, but I think this really is literally, you know, so much strength and stamina is needed, not just because of the power of what he's written, but the length of the whole work, which is so considerable. And you know, well done. You're covering everything in a very proficient way, and you know, with a lot of musicianship. It's just very impressive. I think if we just go back to the beginning. I think the sense of pulse is really important because this is Allegro Giusto, and there are lots of kind of tricks and difficult things. It's easy for things to rush, which means then there's a slight lack of clarity. So I think trying to really keep that pulse, and this can sound can kind of sound like chords very easily. I think if you could really find the correct timings for those string crossings, and also the correct kind of balance of the weight from the bow, so that we get a bit more clarity of those brilliant shapes across the strings. Let's just go back and work in detail on each section. Alright, well done, it's coming. Could you just show a little bit more clearly what patterns you feel inside the semiquavers? So are you thinking or are you just thinking in fours?
Oh, I'm thinking more of the.
Okay.
Yeah.
And even with those, I'd like to hear more clearly when you change the pattern to the F sharp. So these are the kinds of things that will actually make you even more rhythmical if you're finding all of these little patterns inside the passage.
Okay.
Let's just try that first. Good. All right, it's coming. I must admit that I can't actually see your bridge at the moment, so it would be quite useful to see that if it's possible without too much difficulty. Yeah, that's super. If that's all right for you.
Yeah. I can just.
You may have lost a tiny bit of tempo by doing that, but it's definitely worth it temporarily. Then you can put that same idea up to your original tempo. But I find that so much more interesting and exciting because I'm really hearing how the patterns are being produced as well as the virtuosity of it. And this sounds like, you know, when you trap a wasp in a jam jar with a bit of honey or something. I mean, it's well played, but I don't feel the function of that leading towards the pattern at figure 1. Could there be some sense of accumulation in that bar?
Okay.
And maybe even, you know, it's maybe more wriggly feeling inside that pattern of notes rather than just accenting the F each time. Could we feel the contour? Yeah.
Okay.
So, can I just check, just before we do that, can I just check one other thing? The amount of bow that you're using now. Could you be more conscious of where you are in the bow when you're playing on the C string note and where you are for the A string note in order to try and control the rhythm of the bow across the string? actually accelerating in the descending string crossing. You're kind of shutting the lid on the Jack in a Box on the way down. Sort of. Can you make sure that you just get into that kind of rhythmic pattern across the strings that doesn't accelerate on the way down? Yes, it's coming. It's coming. Do you know what I mean? That you've been used to playing faster across the so you know that shape that's popular. There's a kind of infinity shape that people often have on a pendant. It's like a curl. It goes like that. So it's a twist that would go on forever. So I mean, in a way, that bow pattern is like a kind of infinity shape across the string. It's equal loop each side. Great. So I think just being aware of that, because I think there's just so much adrenaline when we start this that it's easy to kind of crush the patterns rather than I think in your practice expand the patterns and then translate any of the loss of tempo back to tempo when you are preparing after you've explored. But in exploration, maximize the patterns inside. So we were just going back onto that, but having said that, not just load of accents on the Fs, but really feeling all those patterns inside. Yeah, good. And try and keep physically pliant in both hands. So I'm trying to feel a little bit of the fingerboard not being rock solid in my mind, that I can go into the fingerboard with the fourth finger and then the first finger and rock a little bit with the left hand as well.
Okay. Sorry.
Can you just play slowly? And you can hear how I'm shaping the last three notes. Yes?
Oh.
Yes. So I mean, it doesn't have to be always the same pattern, but I don't hear, or the first time at least, I didn't really hear any of those kind of shapes. So let's put that together from the beginning.
Okay. You can try.
Yeah, that's so much better. And now I felt at figure one that it's kind of like the previous material has been introducing figure one. That especially the bar before it now felt like that was repeating in order to give birth to, so that you can then play at figure one with more kind of joyful feeling in the sound. Well done, well done. So there's everything to be gained and nothing to be lost, I think, by going back in a bit more detail, maybe slightly under that tempo that you first played in, because you've proven that you can play the notes, in the fast tempo, and to add more of this before you go back into that tempo. I feel that I don't mean this to sound as if as a criticism of the piece, but I often have the feeling that he's tried to make some surprising and unusual notation patterns, not only in the virtuosic things but in the melodies as well. So I think try to show the twists and turns that he may have put in to try and bring more originality. I mean, it's a kind of a strange notation. And again, distribute the timing of these semiquavers so that you can show the peaks and the kind of turns inside this. rather than just on fours, yeah?
Should I just play it up to speed?
Yeah, play it slightly under the speed and show what you think those interesting contours are. Yeah, that's good, but I hear mainly fours. Could there be upbeats there? For instance, the top note, the E flat, he could have written. Or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, do it once again under the tempo, showing what's there.
Sorry, my finger. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well done. And you could ask the question: is it? You could see it from the upbeats, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. So I think it's really important at this stage, when you can already play it very fluently and you put fabulous work into it. I would say it's very important to go back and look more from this point of view.
Okay.
Otherwise, in fact, it becomes more of a contest of, can the cellist play it really fast? How good is their technique? And actually, we're not unearthing. We ought to be able to take those first two things for granted when we come to the performance of this masterpiece. But what are we actually delivering in terms of what his ideas were in the patterns that he's given us? So I think, invest as much as you can in that while you're building, ever more proficiency with these notes. Can you just try maybe from figure 1, and don't worry at all about small mistakes. While you're, whenever we change something, if we change a musical idea, it means that the timing of our hands is a bit different. So we might temporarily make a mistake. That doesn't worry me at all. But I'd love you to try from 1 and try and fit in some of these kaleidoscopic shapes into your playing.
Sorry.
Yes, well done. Well done. Yeah. So I think it just feels more exciting. Imagine if you don't know the piece at all. You want to be blown away by all these kaleidoscopic shapes and the brilliance of patterns coming through. Good, well done. I mean, just not to ignore some of the basic things, obviously. I think it's always a question of coordination on something like this. So do practice it in small bursts, maybe stopping on certain notes to check that you're balanced in your left hand. That kind of practice, so you're completely refreshing that aspect all the time as well. Really well done. Let's go on. What would you say about some of the melodies that he's written, in terms of, do they tend to be quite short, or what kind of shapes do you find in these melodies?
Quite short, and little, just the one at the top of the top of the second page. It's very it's just up and down, all over the place, constantly up and down.
Okay, All right, good. I mean, I think he set us a bit of a challenge in a lot of these melodies, because you're right, a lot of them seem to have some quite short units in them. But, and I mean, this particular one at the top of the second page, you keep coming back to the E natural millions of times. If you look at that bit, it just everywhere. I think so. The challenge is, how do we make a longer phrase out of some of these things? And I felt that you were a bit prone to kind of releasing a lot of weight downwards into the string in the same way. Could you try to think long term? Yeah, how would you play all these in the first phrase, for instance, first line?
Yeah, quite sustained.
Yeah, I mean the first one. It's almost like an upbeat to the tied one, isn't it? Maybe could you play a version of that first phrase without all of the notes?
Okay. Sorry.
So the first one is like an upbeat, isn't it, to the second E? And then one. Just do that once. Yes. Yeah. Well done. Do you agree that that's pretty much the gist of the phrasing, isn't it? In that. So you've just played with a fantastic variety of ingredients in those E's. Like your bow speed was different some of the times. You had a bit more depth some of the times. Different kind of vibrato shape. It was really excellent. I think make sure that's the case when you play all of the other notes in the phrase.
Okay.
Can you play the whole phrase now? Yeah, it's coming. It's definitely coming. Do you know the phrase, give a man enough rope and he'll hang himself?
No.
Okay, so it's a slightly macabre thing to say in your class, so forgive me for that. But yeah, basically it's saying that you can have too much of something. And that, if you have too much of something, bad things can happen as a result of that. And I just think if you now control the bow distribution even more wisely, so at the moment you're playing, so everything has a lot of bow, but could you try to make sure that you're not always kind of bulging at the beginning of the stroke because you've got too much bow?
Okay.
Well done. But listen carefully, because both of your E's on an up bow have a bulge. You play so both of those have the same kind of emphasis. Don't you think that the penultimate one is still travelling towards the end of the phrase?
Yeah.
So we don't really want to have a bulge on that E before the 2/4 bar. Good. It's much better. So I think all of these melodies. Same thing for when you get to that one, think as long term as you can, and put all of the bow shapes into that context. How would it have been if he'd written sharp and the battle between the D sharp and the E, which you already had in the previous part of the melody. But it's become more frequent, therefore more insistent here. So I think, could you actually change the texture of the bow? Maybe the first interval is more open, and the second one a slower bow. Instead of just having the same energy the whole time in the bow. Yeah. And then it's free again, the bow after that. Yeah, it's better, but you know, without that kind of detail of expression, I think it just sounds. Yeah, I'm not talking about your performance, but the music just sounds a bit inconsequential if we're just sitting. Yeah, so you need to find that balance technically between the horizontal use in the arm and the fingers, really bringing those shapes out in the music generally. Yeah, good. And just, I know you have an accent here, but could you keep some of the sound quality? You kind of play. It's still strong, isn't it, through this melody? Yes, yeah, that's better. So just keeping the core quality in the sound. Bravo, that's really good. Let's go on to the octaves. Good. Yeah, well done. That's good. I mean, do you think of this as punchy, kind of? Is this brass? If he'd orchestrated it, would it be trumpets and sort of trombones? Da ba ba bum.
That's what I picture it as. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Great. No, I agree with that. I just wonder if there can be a little bit more tension. Having just a little bit more feeling of the resistance, dum bum 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 yum, in the rhythm, not too kind of rushed in that way. And then are these on the beat more? Is there a little bit more offbeat before you settle into the on the beat things? Yeah. Good. I mean, balance in the left hand is really important here. I actually use a 4 on the top E flat. I don't know if you ever tried. So that I can keep a bit more of the same weight in the first one.
Oh, it does. I think with practice that could actually be a lot more like.
Yeah. It's interesting the different size of our hands though, because for me that 4 is comfortable. For you, it's way further. So, but yeah, I mean, see if that could help kind of stabilize the weight that goes into those chords a bit more.
And just a quick reminder, there's just 5 minutes left in the lesson.
Okay, thank you. Great, and then going onwards from that, could you try and keep the bow a little bit more legato in the string for the quavers and the double stops? So really relaxing the right arm weight into the string and trying to feel kind of between the notes a bit more with the sound. Yes, that was very, very well done. I mean, I just would like to feel a bit more of the harmony. So in the bow play with emphasis on the first. Can you play it just a little bit slower so you can shape the harmony a bit more? Yes, it's already better. I think this question of how you feel the traction of the bow through the right hand fingers, in other words, that the right hand fingers can lean into the string a bit more sometimes to bring out a changing harmony, is quite important. Yes, that's good. And I know that there is a really strong pulse here and not much time to sort of vary things, but make sure that we kind of feel the character of that chord. I think you're rushing. Yeah. So let's play up to the tempo then from here. Yeah, good. That's coming. I think it's really good to sort of feel that different kind of texture from the bow in the chords. I know that we're going to run out of time soon, so I just want to cover a couple of ideas from other places. I mean, have you heard any ballet, any Prokofiev sort of ballet scores or anything?
I'm going to say no, I don't think so.
That's okay, but I think there's a lot of very balletic things in the music, and from Seven, for instance, it's very balletic. I wondered if you could get a little bit more that feeling of the precision. The ballet is even more disciplined than what we do. Mm-hmm. They bleed for their art often. So in other words, I mean, the character isn't painful here, it's just that I'm thinking of the precision of those strokes, for instance, in the character of the rhythm. Can we just go into that? And I think make sure you don't rush. So you need to feel an upbeat from the last beat and a half before Seven, maybe to really start on the octaves, make a moment of landing on the octaves. Right. Rather than rushing into them. Let's go from the Combrio. Yes. Good. Well done, that's good. I mean, they sound like down beats to me. Could they all sound more like upbeats? Yeah, a lot more feeling of up than down.
Yeah.
With ballet as well, I think the head is so important as well. They could be doing the most incredibly complex things with the feet, but also the head. So when you have the octave, make sure that that's really the right kind of gesture musically.
Okay.
These. Again, if you vary a little bit where you do them in the bow, they'll sound much more expressive.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, if you could be very rhythmical but varied in where you are on the bow. So you don't rush. Yeah, good. So, you know, it has to have that kind of uplift and charm at the same time in that section. And just before we have to finish, I'm sure we have to finish very soon, but I just wanted to see if we could get an even longer kind of phrasing from 11. So basically, try to play through, I don't mean accelerate, but in the shape of the bow speed, could you play through any of the connecting longer notes, so the tied minims or the dotted minim, so that you're sending us into the next part of the phrase? And just a final thought about the colours in these kind of melodies. I think you could explore a bit more whether you're playing with the bow angled towards the lower string or the upper string for sound reasons. So if I play with the bow kind of angled a bit towards the G string, I'll get a warmer kind of sound. If I want to send the sound sort of in a brighter way, then obviously I'll do the opposite and play with the bow kind of going upwards more to the A string side. So I think instead of increasing the volume of that melody too much, play with the colours a bit more.
Okay.
Can you just try that as probably our final thing that we do, unfortunately, but... That's beautiful. I think I would definitely explore that more in all the melodic things, because I heard such a different range of kinds of sound without going into the wrong kind of dynamic range as well. So, you know, really, really well done. And the length of the phrase is much, much better. Fantastic. I fear we need to wind up, but it's been lovely to hear you. Really well done. Such a challenging piece. You're playing really well, so very good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Callum. We'll bring on our next student now, Paddy.
Hello.
Hi, Pada.
How are you?
Great to meet you. Fine, thank you. Looking forward very much to hearing this Schumann that you have, isn't it? The first
Yes,
movement?
it is.
Great. I mean, this is quite a long movement as well. So what would you like to do? Do you want to play until the end of the development?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Great, great.
Will I go ahead?
Yes, whenever you're ready. Whenever
Great.
you're ready. done. Bravo, bravo. And you know, I know I was saying this about the Prokofiev and you know, obviously Dvorak, very challenging, but I think this Schumann is just challenging in a really unique way. And part of that is to do with the material being so very atypically mercurial and kind of unstable in the opening of the this time. You know, most romantic concertos will start with the first subject, which is fairly strong and assertive and traditional, and then a second subject that is softer. But yeah, we launch straight in with this into something that is so erratic and changeable, and I think that really impacts the kind of demands on the player in terms of tension, potentially, and you know, pliancy, where we're launched straight into something where it's demanded of us to be incredibly pliant. So I'm interested in all of that, and you know, and how we might tackle some of those challenges. But you know, really well done, because you play very, very well and with a lot of sincerity in what you're doing. I think the first thing I would be really interested in is hearing you play that first phrase without any vibrato at all, and just really focusing on the expression in the bow and the shapes that you have there in that first phrase. Yeah, okay, good. That's good. It must feel a bit like, I think if somebody said to me, you've got to you know, go out for a meal, but you're not allowed to wear any makeup, I think I would be very tempted just to put subtle little bit on, because I would feel much more comfortable. I think just the reason to do no vibrato in this kind of work would be to really investigate the balance of your left hand. You know, how are you landing in things? Do you feel that you've landed with a secure kind of general balance for the position that you're going to play? So really try, see. And you can always do that with the most beautiful luminous bow sound, just to encourage yourself, yeah? It's coming. To get those overtones working, which are the thing that kind of gives us the chance to move fluently on the instrument, really, is to hear the overtones and to judge the timing of the movement in relation to the development of those overtones. So I've spoken earlier this afternoon about a sense of pulse with shifting, how important that is.
Yeah.
But determine in terms of the development of the note, when is the right time to move in the left hand. And I think that you let some of those overtones escape from the bow, let's say at the end of the E, because you're starting to worry about the shift.
Okay.
But that's the equivalent of, you know, turning the lights off just as you're about to step onto the escalator or something. I mean, you need to illuminate for the left hand with the bow. Yeah.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, it's much better. And then if you don't want the slide, obviously just move a little bit later. Sorry. So you're moving later. I think in both hands, if you try to imagine that the textures that you're dealing with, in other words, the fingerboard and the string, I mean, the string is pliant in actual fact anyway, but try to imagine that the fingerboard is a little bit pliant. It's not just a rigid piece of wood, which in fact it is. But if you imagine that you're making just as much kind of impression on the fingerboard as your bow is on the string.
Okay. Yeah.
One more time without vibrato. Well done. That's excellent. And you know, I felt that you prepared it beautifully. but if I'm honest, I didn't feel at the beginning that you were able to sort of focus in that way, in a slightly more relaxed way, on those things.
Yeah.
But that actually there was quite a lot of tension. So I think this would be the way to work on the basis of that for you.
Okay.
I think a good byproduct of that will then be that you will vary your vibrato more, because I felt that it's very easy for the vibrato to be kind of on the surface of the sound rather than emanating from within it. So let's do it now with vibrato, but see if you can feel the shape of the vibrato. Yeah, there might be some places where there really isn't that much. There's just a hint of development there. I think this idea of imagining the response of the fingerboard more like clay than like wood can continue in that phrase, especially into the G sharp. Sorry, one way around now. Absolutely microscopic point now, but could it be slightly more integrated to use the stopped A? So yeah, well done, that's super, but you went back to the multi-purpose vibrato.
Okay.
Those two Ds are not the same. Yeah. Great, well done, that's excellent. I just feel that this playing is now a lot more flexible in a way that suits all the many changes in the music. Great, and let's go on. And I wondered about, I know it's very difficult to even try out different things on when you're used to on virtuosic bits, certain patterns. But I wondered, don't you think these are kind of one flourish in the music rather than two separate gestures, these arpeggios?
Yeah.
And so I did wonder about trying them in one bow, possibly.
Okay. That might be a little bit challenging right now. But
by the way, I think I said this earlier today. I really am not fazed by small mistakes in these kind of sessions. So don't prioritize perfection.
Yeah.
Prioritize trying things out. Yeah. Tried. I think another idea, if you're interested in doing them more as one gesture, could be that you did up, then down, and then up. So you had the That's an option. Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Let's try that and carry on from there.
And then the second time when it comes around again, would you keep?
Yeah. So down, up, down, and then doing up bow for the arpeggio.
Yeah. Okay. I see. Yeah.
Good, well done. And look, I'm not trying to, force anyone into any different bowings or fingerings or anything like that. It's just an idea to try and get a flourish into the And then I would recommend practicing by adding a note each time to the arpeggio, whichever way round you are in the bow. That kind of thing. And if you add a little bit of crescendo, so each note that you add when you practice like that, boost the bow a little bit, and then you're killing two birds with one stone, etc. So you're building the right shape at the same time. Great. Let's go on after that, just so we get more covered. So maybe try from the there once. Well done, that's very, very good. I mean, are there any kind of things that you really notice that are features of the music that keep kind of recurring in this section? I mean, I would have just said, I would suggest maybe appoggiaturas, because right from the beginning. And, it's just everywhere, really. So that's something to maybe enjoy thinking about. Where are they deeper? Where are they a little bit more? Just a suggestion. For the deeper ones, what does that imply for the bow shape and the vibrato? How do you put them into a hierarchy so that it isn't always just appoggiatura after appoggiatura with the same kind of depth?
Okay.
So, it's obviously quite a significant one. But this one wouldn't be the same. So I think as you play, just see if you can anticipate the role of those appoggiaturas in the phrase. Let's go from that D flat one. Better structured. I think the other thing is that not every colour suits every person. I think I'm not very good with bright pink on the top half, for instance. So if you have such sensitive intervals against amazing harmonies, but you use the same vibrato, then it's a little bit colour blind in a sense. Constantly anticipating and sensitizing the left hand to the harmonic context. If you need more time when you're practicing to actually explore colour and vibrato change, I recommend linked bowing. Because then you get kind of double the amount of time between the notes. You could almost practice, a whole piece in link bowing if you wanted to. So let's do the same thing, but just trying to anticipate and adjust even more. close together, but quite different. So much better.
Yeah.
So much better. Great. Let's go on after that. Lovely. That's very, very good. I think, you know, the other dimension to having so much instability in this first section is that there's a big cocktail of different rhythms that he's used for us to enjoy. There's obviously a lot of 2 against 3 in many places, triplets and that kind of thing. Could you really get under the skin of every rhythm that you play, especially when you have several different ones within the same phrase? Syncopation, triplet, upbeat, semiquavers, etc. So, you know, with fantastic wealth of things to enjoy. Chance to keep one shape sort of with simple bowings, I would. Yeah, I think it's perfectly possible to do that all in one bow.
Okay.
And you know, think about the significance of the notation against the harmony. If it had been it's really nice having that B natural and then the A. So don't kind of give up with the bow, but keep the right hand focusing those. I think there's a limit to how many harmonics sound nice in a row with things. If they can be there for luminous reasons or, you know, a positive quality, then I think that's very good. But I think if you have one here, I think the forte piano maybe play as a stopped note, yeah. So it's more expressive.
So, would you put a 2 on it then from the...
No, I use a 3 actually.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Challenge yourself with the bowings. You know, do you need to change the bow if it splits into the shape that's there?
Okay.
I don't think you need that, and I mean the emphasis is actually on the first beat. It's kind of one gesture, so maybe you try without splitting.
Okay.
That's good. I think though maybe change the bow on the C, because that's where the resolution in the orchestra is.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Much better. Good. And just generally, you know, in that sequence, it's building in intensity. So maybe changing the texture of the bow. There's a kind of sense of wonderment there, isn't there, with that heightened G sharp. And then orchestra C sharp. A bit more intense. So the kind of speed of the bow and the weight of the bow, I think, needs to transform during that phrase a bit more.
Will I go from the?
Yes. Let's go from there, but see if you can try out that idea of not splitting the bow so much in the up bow. So down and then up. All of that arpeggio all in one bow. Up more in the phrase due to the sound changing in that way.
Okay.
I think the situation with electric vehicles at the moment is that they actually can be really fast, but there's still a problem with the charging, and you're having to stop to recharge your Tesla at the moment.
Okay.
So yeah, changing the bow. I think you could. Maybe in the second one you could change, you know, midway through the scale, but the first one doesn't need it.
Yeah. Okay.
It's much more convincing gesture, but make sure that you do crescendo. So it really has energy. Convincing, I think, than having to change. Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Could you make us feel the kind of effort of climbing, the kind of big deal of actually achieving the top note more? I think they're very simple notes to play compared to everything else we've had to do, but there needs to be a feeling of resistance in reaching the top.
Okay. Yeah.
Just a quick reminder, sorry, Pather, 5 minutes left.
Thank you. Yes, well done, that's super. Really good. And don't forget the wonderful chamber music that this concerto is with the orchestra, both within the solo line and the interactions, but also the way that you connect to the tutti each time. There's often a genuine sort of handing over. So always remember that in terms of the timing that you choose for your last couple of notes.
Okay. Yeah.
You're not giving up. You're actually passing the energy into the orchestra. Yeah. Great. I'd love to just cover, you know, before we have to finish, some of the other kind of material. This very kind of light-hearted, consonant and almost chatty, conversational style that comes in the next entry. So let's go on from here. simplify that. If you could only play 3 notes to represent the whole of those 3 bars, can you play me the 3 notes that you would pick?
Maybe.
Okay. I mean, how about
Oh yeah. Yeah.
so it's really simple in one way. Functionally, it's very simple. It's just an upbeat to the resolution, but obviously it's the most gorgeous shape that is given us a convoluted shape. So I'm just wondering if you could simplify again the gesture. I think you don't need to change 4 times the bow.
So change.
Well, I think it makes sense to change on the C sharp, because this is all coming out of the D, and then an upbeat.
Okay.
Yes, that's right. And I mean, I'm not here to dictate bowing, but it's just the idea of your phrasing being a bit more kind of simple.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, within that, perhaps there's a little bit more flexibility physically with the bow. So you could allow different weights and different bow speeds in that pattern. Yes.
Yeah.
Great, that's lovely, and it hopefully feels a bit more natural to play rather than so many different parts. Yeah. Great, let's go on. Yeah, well done. Very good. This is very tricky. Doing it very, very nicely. I mean, if you do start with the upbeat on a down bow, it could be a really nice idea. But I think give it a lot of character, kind of poise.
Okay.
I also wondered, because you're getting around it extremely well. Perhaps you could be a little bit more capricious. And conversational in the character and the timings of what you do here.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. This section scares the hell out of me. I think that's the only thing about it. But yeah, I completely agree with you.
Because actually, the orchestra don't have many notes, but where they place them is super important. And so if the soloist is very clear about the shape and the timing, it's so much easier for them to accompany well.
Okay. Yeah.
timings, the more confident you can feel and the more swept up in it. The other thing, I think, always make sure that the end note belongs to the previous phrase and the upbeats belongs to the next one. So that's the end of this part, and this is the beginning of, because I hear bom 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 as if it's 1, 2, 3.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Just try that. Just try that. Yes. It's almost a shame to do that on the G string because it kind of is an event in itself. Maybe. If you did it on the D string, yes, and then yeah, that's right. Then it's like it's within the same voice.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
is better.
Yeah.
Very good. I fear that we're running out of time, so I wanted just to be able to ask you, I know we haven't covered everything you played, unfortunately, but do you have any other kind of questions just before we have to finish?
I mean, the only sort of small one I kind of was just, I mean, you kind of answered, but just whether you'd any advice on like how to make some of the shifting a little bit not easier. That's not just less stressful, maybe.
Okay. I mean, my advice would be to concentrate on the balance of the hand. So obviously arriving well in the new area, but then when you're in that area, feeling very balanced, making sure that all the fingers are supple, that the thumb is in the right position for the group, and also to have kind of energy and articulation with the left hand. So that I'm really, strong but light in the left hand, but hopefully as well timed as I possibly can be with the shift.
Okay.
So yeah, that would be my advice, to really work on that kind of texture in the left hand and be very, very well timed. I was speaking earlier in the class about subdividing in shifting, so that you can be absolutely certain of when you're leaving. And I think there's no substitute in terms of feeling secure about shifting for having a really strong sense of pulse in the left hand.
Okay, that's really helpful.
All right, I fear that I think we have to wind up. Is that right, that we need to wind up now?
Yes, yeah, that's it. That's time, I'm afraid.
Thank you very much, Pedro.
Thanks so much, Anna. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you so much for everything today, Hannah. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Great
It's been
to have
a
you.
pleasure to hear everybody. Well done to everybody today.
Lovely. Thank you so much. And we all look forward to your concert tomorrow.